Hi, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a series where I get to talk all about myself. Uh, I actually got a request to talk about my writing process specifically, rather than just in general and tips and things, because the novel writing tips series is a lot of tips that I have learned through writing myself, but it's also an amalgamation of different things I've found online. And I was originally intending to put a lot of my own process into those videos, and I probably still will. But as I was filming them, it never really worked out that way because I don't plan these videos. I just kind of go, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. Let's talk about it. If you saw how many files I deleted because I didn't like the takes I had, you'd be amazed. So in this first video, I'm going to be talking about how I outline or don't outline, my characters, plot, setting, all that type of stuff. I'm going to try to take the information that I'm talking about in the novel writing tips series and talk about those in these videos. These videos probably just won't happen as often, but when they do, they'll probably be a lot longer because I talk a lot. And yeah, so let's talk about my process. So before getting into anything else, I want to go over how I come up with ideas. And it's probably very similar to everybody else. I get a lot of ideas from what I read, what I watch, and even sometimes I get ideas from dreams. Not so often anymore, but occasionally, something will pop in my head and I'll be like, ooh, that's interesting. Must write down before I forget. But I get ideas from everywhere. It's just kind of a matter of, is this an idea that can actually become a story? Most of the time, the ones that I come up with from dreams don't. They are completely kind of without merit to some extent, and they're weird. But they're fun, write down the idea. Oh, that'll be fun. But yeah, I get a lot of ideas from reading a bunch of different things, and for romance in particular, which is the genre I write most often in, I want to read more of something that I like. And it can be hard to find a particular author that I really like, or that, the stories really connect with me. And I've got a ton. I mean, I've got hundreds of romance novels. I'll have to show you at some point. And while I'll read a lot and be like, yeah, that was pretty cool, some of the stories they don't connect with me in the way I want. And so I want to write what I want to read. And that's a big thing that can help you out. If you just don't know what you want to write, try to think of something you want to read and write that. At least try anyway. And so that's what I do. Actually, for my current manuscript, the idea was I kind of was trying to figure out how to have an interesting conflict in the Regency era with my characters, because I usually come up with my characters first. And I just stewed on it for a while. It was the initial kernel of the idea was just, I want to have a conflict of some type in the Regency era, and I want it to have to be like a marriage of convenience type thing. I love the marriage of convenience trope. I don't know why, but it's great. Usually it's because they hate each other starting out, or they just don't know each other, and then they slowly get to know each other. It's great. But I knew only a couple things, and then I just sort of sat on it and I brainstormed it for a long time. And eventually I came up with my full idea and I was able to start writing. So that leads into, once I've got this idea, how do I actually start writing? Well, I mentioned that I was brainstorming on the idea, and that's really my sort of plotting. I am very heavily on the pantser side / discovery writer. I'm very much on that side of the scale. I'd say I'm probably 70 to 80% pantser and probably maybe 20% planner. I don't like plotting stuff out, I found that I don't get anything done. And so usually it's my characters that kind of tell me where to go. Because even when I'm brainstorming in my head, I'm only brainstorming events. I'm not usually brainstorming too much of how people get from point A to point B. There's some of that, but mostly when I'm brainstorming, I have an idea and I'll think about it for a while. I usually have an idea in my head for, it's at least a few weeks, but it's closer to a month or two before I actually start writing. Now I'm usually writing something else while I'm doing this, but it's in my head. So instead of abandoning a project or trying to write a second story, I'm just doing it in my head. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, it lets me know if the idea is even viable. I have so many ideas. I have come up with hundreds of ideas over my probably 2 decades of writing, and pretty much all of them were horrible and never went anywhere. I think I've written down the first 2 to 3 pages of dozens of stories, like over 100 stories. It's ridiculous. But I found that brainstorming prevents that. If I have an idea that I like enough to potentially write about it, I'll actually write down the details of it to an extent. It's the simplest thing ever. I pull up a Word document and I type in like loose bullet points. Female main character does this. This is kind of the point. This is male main character. Oh, this is kind of the thing. Maybe this is why there's a conflict. Maybe not. I don't know. This happens. All I know is at some point this has to happen. And then I'll go back and I'll make changes eventually when I'm still brainstorming. Like, oh wait, no, this is actually how this is gonna happen. Oh yeah, no, I figured out how this is gonna happen. No wait, I'm changing it. It's horrible. It's messy and it's terrible, but it works for me. It gives me. It's usually 1 to 2 pages, and it lets me know the key details of the story, and that way I can recall what I was thinking of later, and I don't have to stop my current project. So also when I'm brainstorming too, I'm also coming up with usually the first quarter to a third of the story. It's not completely planned out. I don't have any of the particular. I have a few of the beats, maybe like this has to happen, or they meet this character, or something. But it's very loose, and I just kind of know this has to happen in some way. But I usually let my characters dictate how they get there, and then that'll change the whole story. So that's why planning doesn't really work. My characters usually tell me where they want to go, and planning doesn't work at all. So yeah, brainstorming is my main form of planning. I will get started writing on something once I'm done with any other current project. I will sit down and I'll start to write, and I will pretty quickly figure out if an idea that I brainstorm is actually going to work or not when I'm writing it. Because sometimes you can brainstorm an idea and it's like, oh, this definitely has legs. I can definitely make a story out of it. But you start writing it and it's just not clicking. But usually it works out better if I brainstormed it for a while and I know where it's going to go. I have some good characters. So yeah, so that's how I outline. I don't outline at all. So moving on to characters and plot. And when I was talking about this in my novel writing tips video, I said they go hand in hand, and it's really true. My plot is usually like the most basic thing ever. And I come up with this basic thing, and I'm like, I'll fill it out later or figure it out. What I want to know is, who are my characters? What do they want? Why are they going to eventually like each other? Why do they not like each other right now or not know each other? Or, what's the conflict here? I usually will come up with my characters first before I come up with the main details of the plot. My current novel, I have basically it's romance. So it's I have a woman and I have a man, and eventually they're going to get together and all that. But I knew that I wanted the main female character. she needed to be poor, but very willful, and she's working for her money. She makes dresses, and she has very, very proud, very strong personality, but she's not too proud to work. All she wants is really just to see her sister get married and be happy, and if she can do that, she'll be very happy. And so that's what she wants. She wants her sister to be happy, and in order to do that, she'll deal with all sorts of stuff. And then there's the main character. He's a duke. He's hot. They always have to be hot. And he basically, he's doing a couple things. He has a family secret that he's trying to protect, and he also has a shipping business, and people are stealing from him, and he's really mad about that. And oops, he accidentally compromises female main character, and well, somebody sees it, and oops, they have to get married. Otherwise, her family's going to be shunned, and her little sister is not going to be able to find a husband, which is kind of necessary for their financial future. The irony of her now having to marry a duke who is very wealthy is not lost on her. But yeah, I just kind of come up with these characters like, all right, how are they going to react in these situations? They have strong personalities, they have wants, desires, needs. Like, all right, these are the characters. This is how they get together. And now, how are they going to deal with future conflicts? I only came up with the first 30 pages maybe of their whole interaction, and I just kind of let them all right, what are they going to do now that they're forced to be engaged? What what type of stuff are they going to do? And it was really fun to use not only certain events that would have taken place back in Regency England to get them talking or fighting or doing sexy stuff. It was really fun to do that, and it was also really fun to see how they might react to certain situations. I'd be like, oh, what if I put them in this situation? How are my characters going to react? And some of you might be cringing, going, oh my god, your characters aren't like real people. A lot of you might be like, oh yeah, my characters, they have a mind of their own. What I mean by that is when you come up with your characters, you kind of have an idea of, obviously what they want, what the personality's like, how they would probably react in a certain situation, but you never really know how things are going to turn out until you actually start writing that, and you get a feel for it. I had, in a previous romance novel, I had actually kind of planned out a fair amount of it, not actually writing it down, but I had a good amount of it in my head of how something was supposed to happen. The couple was supposed to share their first kiss at Valhall, and when I got to that point, I realized she would not kiss him. She is not at that point right now. She's still mad at him or whatever he did. And I realized that I had to completely change some things because I was trying to make her act a little bit nicer to him up to that point, but I realized there was no reason for her to be doing that. So I had to change a whole bunch of stuff. I'm like, all right, my character knows what she wants. All right, It was a pain. Sometimes strong characters can be great. Sometimes they can be a pain in the butt. But so, yeah, I come up with my characters usually first. The plot is usually very basic. Once I have my characters, and then I come up with the plot as I go. I only knew that they were going to get together basically because they were forced to. And I only knew a couple of little plot point things. I had no idea. I completely rewrote my ending because I had come up with an idea probably 2/3 of the way through the novel. And I had written some of it. And when I got to the ending, it just didn't feel right. So I still liked the idea that I had, but I had to go back through the novel and make sure that this idea was well incorporated. And my ending, which had been 2 pages, was now 30. So I had to go back and I had to change that. And that's kind of what happens when you don't really plan things out and you don't really think of your plot that much, certain things can happen and change, and it's a pain. I know if I plotted my novels, things wouldn't change around quite as much. I think they would change around while I was plotting them, but I get so bored. I feel like it's a better use of my time to actually just be writing the novel versus planning it out, because I procrastinate so much. And at least when I'm planning, I'm writing the novel, it's like, all right, I can see, like, I need to write this and get to this point, and then I can fix it in editing. Oh my God, when I get to talking about the novel tips and my own personal experience with editing, oh my God, editing is such a pain in the butt. It's great and it's horrible at the same time. Oh my God. So now I can talk about setting. So setting is super important in the novels that I write, because I write historical romance, as I have said many times. And like I mentioned in the setting video for the novel writing tips, the plots that I want to have could not really happen in modern day. They just really couldn't, and still be like a romance type thing. A woman getting caught alone with a man in modern day is like, oh, okay, whatever, that's her business. Back in the Regency era, it's like, oh, you must be shunned, and that's great. And I love that conflict, and how are my characters going to deal with this, and it's great. So going back several years, how I came up with the Regency setting to set my novels in. I was young. I was probably early high school. I think I was probably in 9th or 10th grade. And I hadn't really gotten into reading romance novels yet. I was about at that age when, most girls start to, but I hadn't really. I tried reading a couple of contemporary romances that my mom had, and they were so horrible, and I hated it. And I always thought romance novels were really cheesy and terrible, and let's face it, a lot of them are. But I was on vacation. My family was doing a road trip across the country, and we stopped at a KOA, and I had read all of the books I had brought with me, and I needed something else to read. And there was a little tiny spinning rack of books at the KOA lobby, and I was like, all right, well, I'll see what they have. And I saw this really bright pink cover, and it was for a book called The Secret Pearl by Mary Balogh. And I think I probably still have it somewhere. I don't know, it's up on my bookshelf somewhere. But I looked at it and I read the back, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's a romance novel, whatever. Yeah, I might as well. It's like $1. So I started reading it, and very quickly I realized, wait a second, this isn't in the modern era. This isn't contemporary. I hadn't read the side, and I didn't know on the spine that said historical romance. I just knew it was a romance novel. And the story, I don't know if the description really made it sound like it was a historical romance. I think if I'd had the context of knowing it was historical romance, it would have made more sense, but it sounded somewhat interesting. So I started reading it, and I realized that I really liked it, and what really helped is that Mary Balogh is actually a good author, and I really like her. If I had found somebody else who had written historical romance, maybe I wouldn't have liked it as much, but I was very lucky that I found her as my first real romance novel that I read and enjoyed. And I really liked the historical setting, and so I knew I liked Mary Balogh, so I got a couple more of her books and read them, and I started enjoying the setting more. And suddenly I have hundreds of historical romance novels. I've got, no joke, 200 to 300 romance novels on my shelves right now. And 95% of them are historical romance. I have a few contemporary and a few other paranormal and stuff like that, but most of them are historical romance, and most of them are Regencies. I just fell in love with the time period and the different situations that they would get into. It's sort of the olden day version of the millionaire, billionaire trope. That is such a popular trope in romance novels, even to this day. The sexy rich guy. That's kind of what you get in historical romance. It's just the sexy rich guy is like a duke or an earl or something. Sometimes they're not rich. Sometimes they're just sexy, and then the girl's rich, and whatever stuff happens. But just the possibilities that you could have in this setting were so interesting to me. And this was not actually the first novel that I completed. It wasn't actually historical romance. I was actually terrified of trying to write a historical romance novel because I thought I would have to do so much research, like just a ton. So I wrote an urban fantasy novel for my first novel, and oh, that was hot garbage. Oh my gosh. I think at some point maybe if I get like enough subscribers or something, or gets requested enough, maybe I'll read a passage from my really just terrible novel. Oh my god, I'm just cringing and like blushing thinking about it. It's bad. I wrote it. I think I finished it like 5 years ago. It's not even that old, and it's just so bad. But so I was really scared to write a historical romance novel, and while I was waiting to edit my first novel, and I'm like, well, like, you got to write something while you're letting the other one cool off. And I said, well, why not? What the heck with it? I'll write a historical romance novel, see how it goes. It's going to be terrible. And it was actually way easier to write than I thought. Because apparently by reading a crap ton of historical romance, I had done darn near all the research I needed to do. Because it's all the tropes and things, and all that is mostly what you need to know. Of course, there's some technical terms, the names of some of the garments, and different locations and things like that is stuff you may have to research, but mostly the mannerisms, how people are dressed, and things like that. You can usually find most of that by just reading the historical romance novels. So I wrote this novel and went, oh, it only took me 2 months. It took me 3 years to finish my urban fantasy novel, mostly because I was procrastinating. It took me 2 months to finish my historical romance novel, and it was amazing. I didn't think that I'd want to write romance. I loved reading them, but I didn't think I'd want to write it, and suddenly it became really easy, and it was fun. Not that writing a novel is necessarily easy, but it became, I don't know, it felt right when I was writing it. Stuff kept coming to me, ideas like, ooh, the whole idea of the romance, and I always love putting romance in my novels anyway. So that was really nice. And so I decided that that's going to be the main genre I'm going to try to write in. And so the setting of my novels is pretty much predetermined for me as far as romance goes, because that's the time period that I enjoy. I know a lot more about that time period than any of the other. Not just the time period, but that type of the structure that people usually expect from a modern Regency novel. So I have a much better idea of that versus any other time period. And I still want to write other novels that aren't romance, but every time I try, it just doesn't work right. So, oh well, I've kind of found my niche, I think. And yeah, so that's how I came up with my setting. My setting was kind of predetermined for me, so that's how I did that. Yeah, so that was kind of how I go about those things. In a future video, I'll talk a lot more about a lot of different topics, like what my daily writing routine looks like, how I edit, even like how do you query an agent, all that other fun stuff. Like I said, I'm going to try to keep it kind of on the same topic as the novel writing tips. And that's probably not what people want necessarily, is to have me keep it on the same thing. But it's easier if I have my thoughts organized. I just sit down and I film. I don't actually I don't have a script. So I need to kind of know what I'm talking about when I go in. It's easier if I know what videos I've already done before for the novel writing tips. But yeah, hopefully you found this interesting. I know it's a lot more casual. This is really fun, just being able to talk about how I write. It's fun. But yeah, so yeah, I think next video, maybe what I'll do is talk about how I write, what I write with trials and tribulations on that. Maybe I'll do a novel writing tip about how to schedule your writing and all that, because you have to treat it like a job. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed filming this, and I'll definitely be doing more of these in the future. They probably won't be quite as often because, well, they may or not. I don't know. It depends on what I want to film. But yeah, so if you like these, like, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.